Hey guys, Troll Pal CHH here. Have you ever seen MANIAC 2? Yeah, with Joe Spinell. What do you mean it's not real? I've got it right here. Yeah, see, MANIAC 2. It's a sequel to the great movie Maniac. I'm lying a little bit. But, in a lot of ways, this really is like a Maniac 2. Probably wondering, what the hell is this? This is a movie called The Last Horror Film. I had to make sure that there's no nudity shown on here, because every time I look at it, I think you can see her nipples, but no, you can't. What is The Last Horror Film? I was kind of unsure of what this was myself, but let's talk about this release. So Severin announced that they were doing The Last Horror Film with this limited edition slipcover artwork by Justin Osborne for Maniac 2, and it's great. Love to kill. So I got this because you could get this and the Joe Spinell plushie, which unfortunately the Joe Spinell plushie is on its way. You know, it's still getting made and they're behind schedule with that, so they're shipping that out separately. But when this was announced, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I feel like I need it. Maniac never got a real sequel, but this movie, The Last Horror Film, is in a lot of ways kind of like a sequel. So even though this is a fake slipcover from Severin, it really is like that. It's important to note that there is actually a 8-minute promo reel for an actual Maniac 2, and unfortunately Joe Spinell died not too terribly long after this, so they weren't able to do it. But there isn't a Maniac 2, but there also really kind of is. You can go on YouTube and check it out. So what is Maniac 2, or what is really The Last Horror Film? So The Last Horror Film stars Joe Spinell. He's a taxi driver in New York with big dreams of becoming a horror director. Now the way he figures he's going to make this dream come true to go find his favorite horror actress is go to the Cannes Film Festival, which is where everybody's going to be, including this one actress that he's absolutely in love with. Now this guy's life is very uncomfortable, and Joe Spinell, as you can tell from just seeing him in Maniac, is really good at playing a psychopath. He is bizarre, he is uncomfortable, he is creepy, and in The Last Horror Film, he portrays that kind of same character, but in more of a different vein. Not necessarily a light of shade or gray, but more of a, oh, this is gonna end really bad, as opposed to, this guy is effed in the head, like with Maniac, where you're just so uncomfortable seeing him. I'm not saying you kind of feel bad for him in The Last Horror Film, but you might feel just a little bad for the guy. He makes his way over to the Cannes Film Festival to go search the actress that he loves. Now, she's doing press for all these movies she's involved in, but he soon realizes nobody wants to give him the time of day because he comes across as a creep. He's weird looking, he's always sweating, he tries to get in places where he has no access, and this begins to, well, piss him off. So in this movie, Joe Spinell starts taking people out one by one to work his way to this actress, and it all culminates to, you know, a great ending, which I'll keep spoiler free, of course. So The Last Horror Film is the name of this, and the name actually has a lot of significance when you see the movie. I'm going to keep a lot of this spoiler-free because I don't know that a lot of people have probably seen The Last Horror Film. I gotta say, The Last Horror Film, aka the fake Maniac 2, is great. I actually really enjoyed it. It was sleazy, it was full of really cool early 80s rock music. Joe Spinell plays this really, really uncomfortable, creepy character, a lot in the same vein of what you would see in Maniac, but this one rides on a more quirkier, just, this is gonna end bad kind of plane. But it's very much spiritual in the way that Maniac was, so I can honestly say that The Last Horror Film really could be considered a, you know, sequel to Maniac, the way that maybe Return of the Living Dead 2 is to Return of the Living Dead 1. Now, if you've seen those movies, you know that Return of the Living Dead 2 was really just like this alternate universe with Tom Matthews and James Cameron playing different people, but they're the same people, kind of. You can kind of say that about The Last Horror Film. But the truth is, the movie that I kept thinking about when watching this was actually Fade to Black. These movies felt very similar, except take the kid who's really wanting to be in the movies and be an actor. You've got this middle-aged guy who's creepy, sweaty, uncomfortable, and just weird, who wants to be this horror auteur, who's constantly having these weird visions in his mind of what he wants his life to look like, and they're weird visions at that. Might I add that the first 3 minutes of The Last Horror Film are some of the most bizarre, uncomfortable, and almost hilarious in how insane it is. I really can't even describe it without getting this video taken down because it's pretty sexual. So with that being said, I actually really recommend The Last Horror Film. Now, I don't know if you can still get the slip version, it may be already sold out, but I can tell you this, when this standard version comes out, The Last Horror Film, get it, because apparently, this is the first time we've ever been able to get the uncut version of this movie on 4K, or at least even seen the full uncut version. And uncut I can attest for because this movie was pretty gory. There was one scene in the movie where a head floats in a sink, and it's just, pretty brutal. I loved it. Let's talk about the special features on the release of the last horror film. On disc 1, we get an audio commentary with actress Carolyn Monroe and Fright Fest's Alan Jones. We also get another audio commentary with Joe Spinell's assistant Luke Walter, who is really great at the audio commentary, by the way. We also get trailers for the film. But on the Blu-ray disc, we get Like a Father Figure. Sal Cerchia remembers Joe Spinell, which was really great. My Last Horror Film Ever, illustrated archival audio interview with producer Judd Hamilton, plus all new producer's cut. And then we also get The Last Horror Film New York and Cannes Locations Visit, hosted by Rue Morgue's Michael Gingold and Severin's David Gregory. The special features on this were exceptionally great. So, Severin, I gotta hand it to you, man. Great job. You also get this really cool book that talks about the making of the film and all kinds of awesome write-ups and pictures. And I did read through some of this, and it was a really fun read. So this is a really nice collector's release of The Last Horror Film. And I gotta say, I'm not anti-slip by any stretch, obviously, since I bought this. But when I heard about this, I just said, I've got to be a part of this. This is way too cool. So The Last Horror Film is a pretty sweet release. I can't wait to get that Joe Spinell plushie, but the real moral of this video is that the movie The Last Horror Film was energetic. It felt like it was the quickest movie I've ever watched. It was a full-length movie. It looked great on 4K. This was restored the best way it could be, and it looked great. The audio was great. A lot of really cool early 80s rock. Some bands I'd heard of, like Depeche Mode and other stuff I never heard of, but it was awesome because early 80s rock is great. The acting was really good throughout all of this, and Joe Spinell is just insanely creepy. So if you like Maniac, The Last Horror Film is going to be a movie you're going to want to check out. So, guys, I gotta say, this is just way too cool. Maniac 2 Love to Kill, the fake Maniac 2, aka The Last Horror Film. What a movie. I really enjoyed it. And if you haven't heard of The Last Horror Film, buckle up and make sure you pick this up from Severin Films because it is a great horror film. I really liked it. You are a creepy son of a bitch, Joe Spinell, and if I didn't think so in Maniac, you definitely proved it in The Last Horror Film. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you've seen The Last Horror Film, please let me know your thoughts down below. But I gotta say, if this is the first time we're getting this movie uncut and in 4K, this is gonna be a release you guys want to pick up. The Last Horror Film gets 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up from me. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.